And welcome to Gentex Multimedia Live streaming from Brisbane. Well, welcome to the show on the 16th of December and getting closer to Christmas every day. Well, right now it's a wonderful day. Well, right now let's take a quick look at what the weather has in store for us. And with that, let's welcome to the show Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 29 degree. Brisbane area is cloudy with high chance of showers. Light winds becoming northeasterly 25 to 35 km per hour in the middle of the day. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 4 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 13, that is extreme. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
And thank you very much, Dilraj, for that update. As we know, the fire danger is low at this time, and we've seen some very extreme weather happening throughout Queensland and, of course, up the borders of New South Wales. So please remain safe and please take extra care if you're driving. Allow enough space between the cars, allow time for braking, and, of course, if the road is flooded, just forget it. Well, right now, let's get into the news for today and look at the news. Number one, is Australia ready for electric cars or not?
Australia's at the back of the pack when it comes to the developed world. We have one of the lowest penetration rates for electric vehicle ownership. And what's worse is there's no incentives, there's no coordination to help assist that. Australia's a car taker, not a car maker now. Most car manufacturers are moving to electric. That's the future. But Australia's falling behind, and unfortunately the government is doing very little to help that. Certainly in a big country like Australia, there's a bit of range anxiety that you might run out, your battery might run flat before you can get to your destination. What we have seen is state governments put in place lots of charging stations along most of the highways, certainly around our capital cities. And it's also worth remembering that most Australians, the average commute is only a few kilometres. So you're not even going that far when you're going to work or you're going to school for the pickup. So you certainly have that range sorted, but there is this perception, and the Australian government has a role to play in helping to address this as well. Right now, the federal government should adopt an ambitious uptake target of electric vehicles, something north of 50% of new car sales in the next 10 years. That would be around about where most of the developed countries are aiming, but the UK is certainly getting to 100% by then. Norway will get there 5 years earlier. So a strong target would send that signal. It would allow manufacturers to import more electric vehicles confident that the government is backing it in, and to help with that sticker price to bring electric vehicles down to the same price as their fuel, their petrol or diesel models. You could also remove the import taxes faced on electric vehicles so that they'd have a cheaper sticker price when you drive them off the lot. That will help with uptake, because ultimately it's cheaper to maintain an electric vehicle, it's cheaper to fuel it, and what the federal government could do is also make it more affordable so that people in the middle of the market can actually buy one.
Well, with that little documentary there on the electric cars, right now let's go into the headlines for today and take a look at news in brief with courtesy of ABC.
This minister has promised to sign the extradition order for Melbourne teacher Malka Leifer without delay so she can return to Australia to face trial. Overnight, Israel's Supreme Court rejected an appeal against her extradition to face 74 charges of sexual abuse. Australia's Attorney General Christian Porter has welcomed the decision, saying it's a significant milestone in the case. Weather conditions have eased across northern New South Wales, with floodwaters peaking at lower than expected levels in some areas. The state's mid-north coast and northern rivers region have experienced 5 days of intense rain and high winds. Further north, Brisbane and southeast Queensland are expecting more rain and possible thunderstorms over the next few days. An extra 10,000 older Australians will receive taxpayer support to stay in their homes as part of a $1 billion investment in this week's budget update. More than 102,000 older Australians are currently waiting for a home care package that's already been approved. In its interim report, the Aged Care Royal Commission described this waitlist as a cruel and discriminatory system. And China has defended a reported ban on Australian coal as both legal and good for Chinese consumers and companies, accusing Australia of playing the victim. A Foreign Ministry spokesperson in Beijing has accused Australia of politicising bilateral exchanges and of constantly accusing and attacking China.
And that's the news in brief for today. And of course, we will later on look at that news in a little bit more detail about what's happening with that coal situation with China. Because as we know, we have had so much protest here on Adani and the coal mines, and of course the coal going to India, and of course now that China has pulling the pin or coming down heavy. There's all these kind of complaints that are happening, but we'll have to look at the whole thing in totality and look at what's happening. Where are we all headed for that? Well, right now it's time for today's interview.
It's time now for Real Estate Update. With Wusha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty, real estate is our world.
Now we're standing here face to face, afraid to move or else.
And yes, it's that time for Real Estate Update with GlobeNet Realty. And with that, I'd like to welcome to the studio Usha Chandra. Usha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on your show, Amish, and Australian Indian Radio.
And it's wonderful to get you back. But right now, let's for all our viewers and listeners, if you could please give us an update on what's happening in Brisbane in terms of dwellings, and maybe of course give a snapshot of around Queensland.
Yes, across Brisbane, dwelling values have risen by 0.9% from the offset of the pandemic from March through November, with dwelling values now at a record high. Despite the recent uplift in the dwelling markets across Brisbane, unit values remain 8.9% lower over the decade. Most Queensland dwelling markets are in upswing, grouping Queensland into 9 sub-markets. 17 have seen dwelling values increase since the offset of COVID-19. The Brisbane inner city and Brisbane West markets were the only dwelling markets to see the fall in values during this period.
So that's a very good snapshot there. And so, there hasn't been a lot of downfall in terms of investment. So when we're talking about investment, we look at the many different kinds of investment where monies have been invested in Australia. So could you just give us a snapshot of, where does residential property values, stand in terms of other means of investments?
The highest value is in residential property. $7.2 trillion were invested in residential properties. Compared to commercial properties, commercial real estate has only $1.2 trillion. That shows a huge difference that a lot of people are investing in residential properties compared to the commercial properties. And now we have seen in this COVID period, commercial properties have been vacant. People, the owners, the landlords are suffering as well. Whereas residential properties, there's quite a few number of applications per property. That shows the best investment is in residential properties. Okay. And compared to the values of listed equities, 2.5 trillion were in value in listed equities. Compared to the value of superannuation, it was 2.9 trillion was invested in super.
So 7.2 trillion in property value. Wow, that's a lot of money invested in. That's a lot of money invested in real estate investments.
Yes, definitely. That's why I've always been saying residential investment is the best way to go. You provide homes to families, it's the best investment for rentals or for homeowners. So yeah, please invest in real estate residential properties.
Okay, so now let's look at Brisbane as an overall, and look at some of the areas of Brisbane, and if you could give us a report on what's happening in the dwelling market, sort of a summary.
Yeah, in summary, I would say that in the last 12 months, Brisbane East has increased by 7.4%, whereas there is 4,117 homes were sold, and the median price is 586,000, whereas compared to North Brisbane, 4.4%, and there was 3,441 sales, and the average price is approximately $579,000. That's the median price. South Brisbane was 1.8%, whereas there's 4,814 homes sold in the last 12 months, and the average price is $657,000. Brisbane West was 5.6%, whereas 2,610 homes were sold, and the average price is about $695,000. Brisbane Inner City, that shows a downfall there. It has gone backwards, minus 3.3% in the last 12 months. 4,997 properties were sold, and there's average price is $594,000. Ipswich is 1.2%, whereas there's 5,021 homes sold. Average price is $357,000. Logan Bowdesert area is 4.6%, whereas there was 4,688 properties sold, and the average price is $403,000. And then we have got Moreton Bay North, whereas that 5.9% properties were sold, and the average price is about $535,000. And then Moreton Bay South is 4.3%, and average price is $527,000. That shows that the most of the sales has happened in Ipswich area, whereas I think the price over there is quite good at the moment. That's why a lot of first home buyers and investors are investing in those areas. Average price is $357,000. That's the lowest price, average price in that area. Compared to the inner city properties, you can see it was minus 3.3%, and for almost 5,000 properties sold, there's a lot of properties which have been vacant, like apartments and units, and the owners are of selling, and that's why the prices are they're not getting the prices which they paid, so the prices have fallen quite considerably in those areas.
So it is interesting to see that, when you look at Greater Brisbane and then you look at Brisbane East, 7.4% rise over the 12 months, and Brisbane Inner City minus 0.6%. So there's a big difference between the two. But when you look at volumes, you look at Ipswich, there is about 5,000, and Inner City is about 4,997. So pretty close. The number-wise, volume-wise, there was enough sales, but it has, gone back 0.6% over the 12 months. But from the peak, it's about minus 3.3, which is a bit. But if you look at the overall market, 7.4% in East Brisbane as compared to minus 0.6% in the inner city. But volume-wise, it was very close to Ipswich, which had the highest sales of about 500,000. So yeah, interesting scenario there. Thank you very much for all that latest in. Now, okay, so generally, what has been the Queensland dwelling markets doing?
Queensland dwelling markets have generally moved into the upswing in recent months, supported by expansive monetary policy and domestic migration trends that may have been amplified by COVID-19. Across Brisbane, dwelling values have risen by 0.9% from the onset of the pandemic in March through to November, with dwelling values now at a record high. However, this is only true to the house segment.
So meaning that only the house segment is, seeing that the prices have been going up. Maybe the reason might be just because of COVID-19, people don't like living in clusters anymore. So they might be looking at, living in individual homes. That might be one of the points.
Absolutely. A lot of people love their gardenings. They want to be at a distance from people. That's why they're investing in houses, and that's the best investment. You get land, your kids can play in that in the property, and then you can do gardening or do whatever. You don't have to take anyone's permission to extend or do anything of that sort. So housing, residential houses are the best investments.
Okay, but what the same time, the other part of the coin is the unit. So what has been the units doing?
As of November, Brisbane units remained 11.9% below the record high in March 2010 and are 8.9% lower than November 2010. The CoreLogic Home Value Index, released at 100 at the beginning of the decade, highlights the relatively subdued 10-year performance in units. That's absolutely true, what we have been talking about, and it shows that, yeah, I've always been saying to most of our people, yeah, invest in houses.
Okay, but even though there is that weakness happening, so what might be the forecast moving forward? Where do you see the Brisbane unit markets going?
I mean, the prediction says, despite showing on the ongoing weaknesses in Brisbane units, there is an increased likelihood that units will also move into the upswing through early 2021. As of November, the 3-month change in Brisbane unit values had entered positive territory, rising by 0.7%. This compares to a minus 1.6% decline in the 3 months to August. Across Queensland, building activity is seeing continued decline in construction of units. As of June 2020, there were 15,653 units under construction, down from 10-year average of 18,859. So that tells you the whole story over there.
So yeah, what it says is that not a large number of new units are being built, and that there might be an increase into that sector coming into 2021. But 2020 definitely has seen a decline in the unit sales and an increase in the residential properties, and we've seen the dwellings and the houses values going up. Well, thank you so much for that information, and I think that's been a very, very good session there, and covering all the current situations on there as well. So what's the market doing in your area, and any open houses, or what's planned for this weekend?
Yes, the market is still pretty strong in our area. We have got a couple of open houses. We have got one at 4 Heathwood Street at 10 o'clock on coming Saturday, and another one at 62 Floramy Street at 11 o'clock. We have got a couple of rental open houses. We have got only 2 rental houses available at the moment, and the girls are doing, the property management section is doing the open houses on those ones. And Vicky had listed a couple of properties last week, and she's already rented those ones as well. So please, if you are thinking of investing in property, in residential property, residential houses, please contact us, and we can manage and sell the property for you at a very reasonable rate.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been a weekly real estate update with GlobeNet Realty and Usha Chandra. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, and have a safe and Merry Christmas.
Please remain safe.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world, and that was the weekly update of real estate with Usha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty. And don't forget that today's live stream is being sponsored by Gaura Travels and www.gauratravel.com, and of course their interactive website where you can go and book. And of course they have very special charter flights going from Brisbane right at this point in time. The next one is going very close on the 21st, so jump on their site and book if you really need to get on that. Very few seats are just left on that one. So right now it's time to get into some of the news and the news brief. But first of all, I'd like to show you one of the cards that has come through. And of course, it says at the back there, if you can see, it's from the Prime Minister. And it's good to see that the Prime Minister is acknowledging us and sending in the card, which other people might have received that as well. But getting a wonderful card there with his signature at the bottom there. It's wonderful to see that. Thank you so much for that. It is good to know that we are there and being recognized as well. So when we started off, we did the documentary on electric cars. So and we saw in that report that Australia is on the back of the pack when it comes to electric cars. But what can we do? How can we move forward to make that a reality?
Plugging in is the new fuelling up.
It's much cheaper than petrol.
David Osmond's second-hand hybrid car is cheaper to run and emits less pollution, but he had to carefully consider the downsides before buying.
One is the number of chargers around the country and the ease of charging. The other one is clearly price.
To reduce emissions from transport, Australia needs more motorists buying electric vehicles, but the push for cleaner cars has been politically charged.
It's a war on the weekend when it comes to the vehicle you drive.
The Coalition promised to develop an electric car strategy 2 years ago. It still hasn't been released.
It'll be coming out in the coming weeks. Obviously with COVID, there's been a switch of focus, but this is still important.
But the ABC has obtained a draft copy. It includes $72 million, already announced, to help build more charging stations, as well as a 2-year trial of electric cars for politicians.
What we've seen from the government is the bare minimum.
There's nothing to make electric cars cheaper and no fuel efficiency standards.
We're the only country that doesn't have mandatory fuel efficiency standards, which costs motorists about $500 every year at the Bowser.
As more drivers shift to electric vehicles and use less petrol, there's less revenue raised by petrol excise. The federal government's draft document doesn't address that shortfall. Some states aren't waiting for the Commonwealth though, with Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales all moving towards road user charges for every kilometre travelled in an electric vehicle. That won't help convince drivers to make the switch, but the Coalition isn't too worried.
At the moment we've got perfectly good petrol cars that many people choose to drive.
Taking the long road to an electric future. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.
And of course, now that Australia has become a great car user rather than car manufacturer, and of course we always look at overseas markets, but what can we do to make it a reality so that more electric cars come here and more electric cars are on the road? Well, right now, let's get another message from our main sponsor. And of course, don't forget that on December 21st, we have the charter flight going from Brisbane, courtesy of Gaura Travels, and you can book with as little as 5% deposit, and prices start at $1,099. So Gaura Travels, your best way home. Please do jump on their website and look at that. Next up, we're going to look at coal. as there has been a lot of talks, and I said that in the very beginning that we will look at coal in a little bit more detail right in here. Of course, we have all sides of the equation. We have the Greenies with their policies, of course, caring for the environment. We have got all kinds of movements, but of course there is a trade war going between Australia and China at this point. So let's take a look at what's looking like as the future of coal.
So what's at stake if China bans Australian coal? It's important to note the type of coal being targeted here, which is thermal coal, not metallurgical coal. Typically, thermal coal is used by power stations, while metallurgical coal is used for things like steel production. Last year, Australia exported $26 billion worth of thermal coal to China, but it's not our biggest customer. Japan takes the lion's share, China is second on 16%, South Korea takes a similar amount, and Taiwan takes 12% of exports. So there could be the possibility of finding other markets for the more than 50 ships sitting off Chinese ports. And if China pulls the pin, it'll be about $3.9 billion worth. With emerging markets like India and Vietnam increasing their orders, the shortfall should be covered sooner rather than later.
So the shortfall needs to be covered somehow, and of course there's 50 ships that are waiting there, and it is in limbo as to what's going to happen. So, when you look at the transportation, there's also this big Indian ship which has been transporting the cargoes, coal.
Ships like Indian bulk carrier Jagannand have been making billions for Australia, delivering coal to China.
I am one of the crew of Jag Anand, and still we are waiting for our rescue.
The coal trade's gone cold, stranding Jag Anand's 23 crew at sea off the port in Jintang in northern China, 6 months after leaving Gladstone with high-quality coking coal.
Please help us get home as early as possible.
If reports coming out of China are right, the ordeal is far from over for the ship's crew.
We can only treat these as media speculation in the Chinese state-owned media.
10 Chinese power stations reportedly told by Beijing not to use Australian coal, in favour of coal sourced from Mongolia, Indonesia and Russia.
It really is a lose-lose here. The other countries have 50% higher emissions than Australian coal.
A $14 billion export market to China no longer looking so reliable or bountiful. The latest play in Beijing's hardening game of brinkmanship that's already done harm to barley, lobster, wine, timber and beef exports.
If the reports are correct, then that is likely to constitute discriminatory practices against Australia.
This is not a trade issue, this is a diplomatic one.
And on that, it appears the Prime Minister heartily agrees. Scott Morrison saying the world's watching how China treats one of its major trading partners.
If a perception emerges that there is a conflation between political issues and a trading relationship, then that can create a lot of uncertainty for many other trading partners.
The government isn't expecting a straight answer on coal exports, but Beijing's trade tactics will have their limits. China's massive post-COVID stimulus program involves huge infrastructure projects that require coking coal to turn Australian iron ore into steel. With a cabinet reshuffle imminent and Dan Tehan widely expected to be named the next trade minister, striking a new tone in the new year will be his main mission. Andrew Probyn, ABC News.
Hello, my name is Gloria and I will be joining the Bal Sanskar and Tulsi Pujan event on the 20th of December. Up be joined kar.
Hi, I'm Kush Sharma. I'll be joining Bal Sanskar camp in Brisbane. You too join this camp.
My name is Pukru and I'll be joining the Bal Sanskar Kendra and Tulsi Pujan event on the 20th of December. So you please join this cultural and inspirational event on the 20th of December.
मैं प्रकृति अत्रियो और 25 दिसंबर को ब्रिस्बेन में मैं बाल संस्कार कैंप ज्वाइन करेंगे। आप भी जरूर आना, बहुत मजा आएगा।
And yes, we are proud to be supporting that event. Please do, send your kids and do register for that event and do attend that event. It will be very good. The kids are our future, so we need to, invest time and energy into our kids. Well, right now, if you look at the COVID-19 and all the pandemic, there's been lots of losses that's been made. Now, where does it fit in with the insurance covers?
We've been here 15, 16 years. This is our home, this is like a family.
Cafe owner Detlef Haupt managed to keep his business afloat despite the huge losses in trade from COVID-19.
We are back to almost near capacity, not quite. Obviously we don't have the international tourists, but we have the local support and the landlord's been very accommodating. And once we need to pay our full cost in everything, absolutely we'll be under financial stress. It's not necessarily only the financial loss, but it's the human loss. You see your staff lose, so good staff, it's hard to get. And once you train them and see them leaving, it's heartbroken.
During the months of lockdown, he took some comfort knowing his insurance policy included business disruption cover. But he was shocked to discover that his insurance company, Zurich, is refusing to pay the claim.
I think we should be absolutely covered for that. We talk hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
Zurich argues that pandemics are not covered by its business interruption policy.
We thought, no, it's just not right. It doesn't smell right.
Their policy covers them for loss of profit, and one of the grounds on which they can claim is if there's been an infectious disease outbreak in the area, right? But their policy excludes cover if the outbreak has been declared a quarantinable disease under the Quarantine Act.
Lawyer John Beryl says Zurich is relying on a reference to outdated public health laws in the fine print of its policy. Those laws define what constitutes a pandemic, but they were updated 5 years ago.
The problem for the insurance company is COVID-19 is not a quarantinable disease declared under the Quarantine Act. It's a human infectious disease declared under the Biosecurity Act. We've got 15 cases at various stages of rejection at the moment, and that's the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands of businesses out there. If these claims are not paid, then a significant number of businesses are going to go to the wall.
Pandemics are something that have never been contemplated for cover, simply because they're too large an event. It's almost impossible to price them.
The peak body for insurers in Australia is refusing to budge. It argues the reference to old legislation still had the intention of excluding pandemics from cover.
I think insurers would acknowledge that it would be a lot cleaner if the Act had been referenced correctly in policies, but they've always referred to the Quarantine Act and subsequent amendments, and relying on the fact that acts are amended and updated and repealed and replaced all the time.
The Insurance Council of Australia brought a test case to the New South Wales Supreme Court in August.
It was a 5-0 result in the Court of Appeal, rejecting the insurer's argument that the Biosecurity Act was an amendment to the Quarantine Act.
Now it wants the High Court to rule on the issue, with billions of dollars at stake.
If the exclusion around the Quarantine Act and subsequent amendments was to be knocked out by the High Court appeal, the industry estimates around 250,000 claims may need to be paid. That could represent up to $10 billion in payments.
While the legal drama unfolds, other small businesses that don't have the outdated definition in their insurance policies have been left waiting.
You can see every colour of the spectrum.
Damien Cody's been in the opal business for almost 50 years. The collapse in international tourism has forced him to close his 2 gem stores in Sydney and Melbourne.
We've gone from a retail business doing between $3.5–4 million per annum to almost zero.
His insurance does include pandemics in its business interruption policy, but he still hasn't seen a cent.
It really irks me that our company's paying all this money for something that seems black and white. And insurers, I think, have an obligation to handle these claims quickly, efficiently and thoughtfully and honestly. You can see this big guy here is a large piece of black opal.
His insurer, Lloyd's, says he's not covered because his stores weren't ordered to close by the government.
So the question there is whether or not it should be covered. Business disruption, loss of business is covered in many insurance policies, but if you look at the fine print, the word pandemic is there, that's excluded. So, individual companies might have to look at their individual contracts and covers to find out whether or not they're covered. But as covered in this report, that it is highly likely that you will not be covered for COVID-19. Well, Byron Bay is having very, very high tides, as is many parts of Queensland and upper regions of New South Wales. Let's take a look at this clip. Even with that kind of high tides coming in, people are still risking, they're going there taking photos. And you'll also find that there's few people who just take in, to the tides and go in for a dip. There we are. Roads are blocked, and as I have said before, if the road is blocked and of course if the road is flooded, it's time to say it's time to forget it. Well, looking at the COVID-19 and the situation, how it was handled, this last report here, taking a look at did our health officials actually understand the situation properly, or did they fail?
People don't know that I have a disability. My disability isn't visible. So people don't really know until they meet me. Sometimes nurses don't know I have a disability until they talk to me and ask me if I understood what they said. And I say not really, or I just nod. It might be on my medical records, but I don't see them and I don't know. There should be something in the medical records to show that someone with a disability, that there could be a colour on their file. So when the nurses and doctors look at the colour, they know they're dealing with someone with a disability.
Gala Travels, your best way home, our sponsors for the live stream, And Malino Air is that charter flight going on the 21st, and you can book with as little as 5% deposit, and prices are starting from $1,099. Gotta travel, your best way home. Well, right now we're going to look at some of the other reports. Let's go now to overseas. Well, Joe Biden has now been officially declared as the president-elect.
Anticipation matched the scale of America's exposure. After 16 million cases and climbing, the fight back starts with a few sharp shots. Doctors, nurses and supervisors on the front line spoke of a vaccine as a peace settlement.
I hope this marks the beginning to the end of a very painful time in our history.
3, 2, 1, vaccinate.
And so it went at 145 locations around the country. Just under 3 million doses will be in freezers within 2 days.
We can meet our goal of vaccinating every American who wants it by the end of the second quarter of 2021.
If the vaccine's arrival marks the beginning of the end of the pandemic, then this day also marks the terminal phase of Donald Trump's presidency. His legal challenges to the election have all flopped, and from here on, his 75 million popular votes don't count for much either. The nation's just taken a leap towards electing its next president, and it won't be him.
20 votes for the Honorable Joseph R. Biden for President of the United States.
In Pennsylvania and 49 other state legislatures, the Electoral College has delivered its verdict. California pushed Joe Biden's tally above the magic 270.
Ayes 55, noes 0.
No rogue votes and no upsets either.
The flame of democracy was lit in this nation a long time ago. And we now know nothing, not even a pandemic or an abuse of power, can extinguish that flame.
Donald Trump's calmly parting ways with the man who wouldn't back his claims of systemic voter fraud, Attorney General William Barr. But still no concession from him. There may never be one. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Washington.
And he couldn't leave that seat at all. Well, right now, Biden has secured that electoral college, and of course, a century-old system had to be put in place just because someone insisted.
I am pleased to announce that Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
Ayes 55, noes 0.
The integrity of our elections remains intact. As I said in this campaign, I will be president for all Americans.
Anita Kumar, so Joseph Biden's victory is now official. Is there any avenue left for Donald Trump to carry on with his claim that he's the real winner?
Well, when you talk to election experts and people that have studied how this process works in the United States, they say there is really no other avenue for the president to go down. But what the president is saying is that he's still planning on fighting this. What we're hearing from his people is that he will continue to file lawsuits and he will continue to fight this, but really there's no path for him. It is not expected that he will be successful in any way at this point.
Within minutes of Biden being officially announced as the winner, Donald Trump announced the resignation of his Attorney General, Bill Barr. What's the significance of the timing of that?
You know, that's so interesting that you asked. So many people have been speculating that President Trump did that at that exact moment because he wanted to take the attention away from Joe Biden. It's very significant because, you know, we've been waiting for the president to either fire or accept the resignation for the Attorney General, for Bill Barr, who was not supportive of the president's claim that there was fraud in this election. And so they've been on bad terms for a few weeks now, but that was really one of the last straws, is when Bill Barr did not support the president's allegations.
What's Joe Biden had to say today?
He gave about a 10-minute address to the nation tonight, basically saying what we've heard from him before, which is The election is over. It's time for the country to unite, and he wants to bring all people together. I'd really call it, he was very critical of President Trump for what he did, and sort of laying out there so that people understood that he has not been successful. Not one place, not two places or two times, but all over the country. His lawsuits have not really gone anywhere. And so I think he was just sort of laying that out for Americans to know that he allowed President Trump to go down this path, and it's played out, and it's now done.
Do we think that Trump will ever actually concede?
You know, from people that I talk to...
So we'll leave that report there, as we know that, finally, after all that rigmarole, it is final that Joe Biden is the president-elect, and he's the one who will be sworn in on 20th of January. Well, right now, the live update from Delhi. Farmers protesters, government is willing to talk with genuine farm unions, says Tomar. And farmers are blocking Delhi-Noida border today. So the farmers protest today, while farmers want 3 legislation to be scrapped, the government said it is willing to continue talks, but it will not back out on the laws. So farmers claiming support from farm unions over the new agri laws. Union Agricultural Minister Narendra Singh Tomar said that the acts have been welcomed in various states across the country, but the centre is willing to continue its talk with genuine farm unions to find a solution with an open mind. His statement comes even as farmers at Singhu border protesting now for 21 days threaten to completely block Delhi-Noida today. Addressing a press conference at Singhu border, farmer leaders said the fight over the new farm laws has reached a stage where they are determined to win no matter what. So, that's the update, and we'll keep you updated and see how we go. That's all for today in this segment, and it's been wonderful to have your company as usual. And don't forget that the segment is sponsored by Gaura Travels, your best way home, and their website www.gauratravel.com.au. And of course, they have those charter flights going to get you back home if you really need to get back home. Well, right now, it's goodbye from me. Until tomorrow, please do take care. And even if you're on the roads, take care as well. Enjoy your time with the family. But most importantly, do remain safe. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me.